Hey guys, welcome to another monthly webinar with Costa Rican Vacations. We are a minute late, so hopefully for those of you that haven't yet joined us, that will give you a little bit more time to do so. Thank you for joining us. This month's subject is the hidden gems of Costa Rica travel. There is an awful lot to cover. Costa Rica is a country with incredible regions, hotels, national parks, beaches on both coasts, and loads of great spots if you want to come back to Costa Rica. Perhaps you went to one of the more popular destinations the first time, and you're thinking about coming back again and again. There are lots of things to see and do that are perhaps off the beaten path or not discussed as much. Today, in our conversation, we have two top travel consultants, both of which you guys have seen before. Rachel, thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
Good, good. Thanks for having me, Adam.
No worries. And Caitlin you're back again. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing?
Hello, very well, thank you.
Kate, I know you're quite close to the Arenal volcano in the San Carlos area. How is the weather looking with you this morning? It looks quite sunny.
Um, yeah, no, it is very cloudy today. It's been
Overcast.
raining all morning, like a nice cool drizzle, but it cools everything off, so that's nice. I've been able to work pleasantly this morning without AC. But no, it's been pretty cloudy, but it's very random, right? Rainforest. I'm sure in a few hours it's gonna clear up for an hour and be super sunny and then go back to rain again.
We are in the end of May, so of course, Rachel, May is a transition month from the end of our dry season into our beginning of our green season. Where do we find you, and what's the weather like?
Yeah, so I'm down the southern region, near about an hour south of Manuel Antonio in Uvita. And we're definitely in our rainy season. It's morning, beautiful, sunny, and then around 3 o'clock it gets super dark. Awesome afternoon showers. Then it kind of starts to lighten up around 5:30 or 6. So it's an amazing time.
Nice, excellent. And I'm obviously based here in the Central Valley, just outside San Jose. It is really, really pleasant, broken sun, cloudy, pretty typical for this time of year. So it is quite pleasant to work for sure. We are not here, however, to talk about the weather. Today, we are here to talk about hidden gems. And as ever, guys, after about half an hour, we've got about 9 or 10 great questions that we're going to get through with Rachel and Kate. We're going to have a live Q&A session as well. So all of you guys that are watching, if you have questions regarding anything about travel to Costa Rica, please get them into us live. You can use the questions and answer chat here on the Zoom call below. Some of these questions we may even answer during the chat, and if not, we will have a dedicated session towards the end of this webinar to get to your questions directly. They can be about anything at all, so please do let us know. I will be sharing a bunch of links that my colleague Pablo, as you remember from marketing, is in the background sharing with me, and I will share them inside the chat with everyone as well. So you guys can check out our featured web pages and our YouTube videos as well. If you aren't following us on our social media platforms, do check it out. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can get a bunch of great information and sign up to our newsletter as well. So you can sign up for future webinars and, of course, see all the great deals and promos that are now running for the green season here in Costa Rica for your vacation. Without further ado, let's jump in to the hidden gems of Costa Rica. Now, we actually did a podcast on this very subject with Kate. So I'm going to share a link as well very shortly so you can go into real detail about what I discussed on our Costa Rica Travel and Living podcast. But of course, the big question is, when it comes to the hidden gems, what are the best hidden gems? Now, I'm going to throw this to both of you guys separately because everybody, we work all over Costa Rica and there's a lot of different places to go based on where you live. So Rachel, when someone asks you, hey, I'm coming back to Costa Rica, I want to go off the beaten path, what do you recommend? What are your top 2 or 3 destinations that you like to suggest to people that are maybe a little more unknown?
Yeah, I think one of the most unique things is, and the hidden gem. It's not super easy. Some of my favorite ones are going to be Hideaway Rio Celeste. I've been with the company 10 years. That's been my number one for many, many years. Just because it's not super difficult to get to, but there's not much around. And it's just a very, very special place. Rafiki Safari Lodge, which is close to where I live down here in the southern region. That's also been one of my favorites. It's more like glamping. But it's definitely harder to get to, but it's amazing once you get up there. every time I do a lot of repeat clients there, and people just love it. They love spending 2 or 3 nights there for the hiking, the waterfalls. There's really cool, like more hidden waterfall hikes that you can do through the property. So yeah, and then another one is going to be El Silencio Lodge. That one's right outside of San Jose. It's more luxury. Again, easier to get to, great to as a stop by on the way to La Fortuna. But those are definitely my 2 or 3 top ones for sure.
I mean, beautiful, beautiful places. So not just lovely hotels, or in the case of Rafiki, an amazing kind of African safari experience just off the coast inside the mountains. So you really feel isolated and in the rainforest, right? But also Rio Celeste, the location, you guys can half see it kind of behind us here with this beautiful turquoise water due to the volcanic activity in the northern region, has a really nice hotel connected to it. So I guess Rio Celeste is kind of popular, but most people don't necessarily thinking about visiting it as its own destination. Would you say that's fair, Rachel?
Yes, for sure.
And the other thing about I love El Silencio Lodge, just outside San Jose, about an hour more or less from the airport, Bajos del Toro. Again, they do a lot of great marketing. So if you don't necessarily want to go to the Arenal volcano, or maybe you want one night in the cloud forest with loads of great amenities, it is a really, really beautiful property. Um, but again, it never feels very busy there, so you get a pretty awesome experience, right? I'm going to share these links. Thank you, Pablo. I've got a bunch of links, so I'll share these links to these specific areas. And as Rachel mentioned, it's not just the hotel that is a really nice place. It's actually the region that they're based in. Kate, when people ask you, okay, hey, you planned a great vacation. We went to the volcano. We went to Mount Antonio Beach or Guanacaste. I want to come back and experience something new. What are your go-to destinations and regions?
Yeah, so the first thing that always comes to my head, absolutely the first thing is piggybacking off of what Rachel said, is El Silencio Lodge in the Bajos del Toro region. That place it has my heart. It's just waterfall heaven. Yeah, there's only one main hotel over there, but it is up and coming. So, I mean, there's just so much to do. If you like hikes, you like waterfalls, you like big, ancient, volcanic falling craters with a waterfall inside of it, like that's your area, and you don't have to go all the way to Monteverde to experience the cloud forest. It is a cloud forest as well. For other areas, um, it's interesting. Last year, actually, with Rachel and I visited Tortuguero, and this time last year, it's been 1 year exactly. And now that's kind of one of my places I like to push if the season is right for an off the beaten path, because it is not something a lot of people know about or they've heard about it. But it is one of those interesting places that if you want wildlife exposure, it's perfect for that. It's not a beach destination, although it is on the Caribbean side. It's all about the wildlife, the birds, the secluded, isolated mangroves. I mean, it's a really impeccable place. So that's a really cool one. And it's a very quick 20-minute flight from San Jose. Rachel experienced that, and hands down, she recommended that was the way to do it versus the car ride. Although, coming from La Fortuna, where I live, I did the car ride, and it was very easy from La Fortuna, specifically like 3.5 hours. Um, and then another area, let's see. I'm a big hiker. Usually my repeats when they come back, they want to do something off the beaten path hiking related. So if you have the time and you play your cards right and plan in advance, then I can take you to some really cool mountain hikes that are not necessarily offered like directly through us, but it's something that I can help with logistics wise and setting up accommodations and then guiding you to hiking those special places. One being Chiripo, that's like the top hike in Costa Rica. It's the highest mountain. It is 100% doable for all ages. Actually, I played Uno at the top of the mountain with a 6-year-old last year. So you can do it as long as you're normally physically active. You just need about 3 to 4 days to spare before and after and during, because it's a really cool hike, but it's an amazing experience. And right after that, I would go to Ubita, where Rachel is at, to relax at the beaches and be away from people and the crowds. It's a good combination to do it like that.
For sure. Excellent. Yeah. For those guys, Kate, your mic is a little difficult to hear. You might want to hold it a bit closer,
Sorry.
but you definitely picked up the Chiripo National Park, which is the highest mountain in Costa Rica. Pretty hard to organize because sometimes there is limited spots, but if you do have 2 or 3 days to actually go and visit, it is an amazing experience. And like Kate said, visiting the beach town of Ovita on the Central Pacific coast between Manuel Antonio and the Osa region is a really nice spot where Rachel is based. So we're gonna cover some of these areas in different questions regarding activities. You mentioned hiking just then as well, but also different beaches, different places that we really like. Marcia, thank you for getting in touch with us. We will repeat the locations as well. I know Rachel got back to you right there, and I'll make sure it's in the chat as well. So if you can see it, El Silencio in Bajos del Toro, for example, Rafiki, very close to Manuel Antonio, and Rio Celeste is in the area of the river itself called Rio Celeste. But please keep the questions, guys, coming in. Rachel, so question number 2, how can travelers experience Costa Rica beyond the typical tourist trail? So when you think about a package, we always encourage our guests to visit the volcano, then visit a beach, so you get the experience of relaxing, probably on the the Pacific side, and then mixing it with a little bit of adventure. If you didn't want to do that for 7 days, is there another combination that might be a little bit more interesting and a bit more unheard of?
Yeah, I mean, typically what I try to do for clients, again, depending on what they're looking for, I try to leave one day open in each area. And then what my recommendation is, like, ask your waiters, ask your, who's working at the hotel, like, what are their favorite spots to visit? Because a lot of them will have more of the local spots, which we still recommend doing. The hanging bridges, the national park, like those still have value to what you do. But then on your off day, like, get off site and actually go explore some of these smaller places that the locals do, versus more of the tourist destination. So I think one of the coolest things to do is, ask everybody at your hotel, like, who works there, what are your favorite spots to visit? I think you wouldn't be able to get any better answers from the locals who actually live in each area. That's not going to be the typical hanging bridges, national park, the things that are pretty well known that we still recommend doing. But then you kind of get the best of both, because you're able to still do the top things there, like the hanging bridges is still awesome, but then you're also able to go see some of the smaller spots that are, what the locals actually visit.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a particular couple of areas that you like to suggest for a repeat visitor?
Yeah, I mean, I know in La Fortuna, I've not been there, but I know Jess, another consultant, she's told me a lot about it. El Santo, or El Salto. I think, Caitlin, you probably know about it, but it's just a few minutes outside of La Fortuna. It's got little different waterfalls. It's pretty authentic, and there's not a lot of, there's not secure parking and that kind of thing. So you want to do it where you're aware of what you're doing. But yeah, just things that are a little more off the beaten path. Here in Uvita, I usually recommend going to some of the other, beaches like Playa Linda, which is north of Dominical. Playa Ventanas, it's a little bit more well known, but it is still a great spot to check out. Yeah, leaving those days open for the clients to kind of see those spots versus the larger, like Dominical Beach, Manuel Antonio Beach. Yeah, getting out and exploring on their own.
Yeah. And of course, if you are in the, it depends on, we're going to discuss about when to visit as well. But depending on when you're visiting, you can visit these beaches, which have huge amounts of space. If the tide goes out down at the Marino Ballena National Park in Uvita, it's an incredible vista where you don't see loads of crowds like you would in Manuel Antonio or Tamarindo, Conchal up in the north for sure. Really good spots. Kate, do you have like a go-to itinerary for repeat guests that don't want to do the same kind of things that you recommend?
Yeah, especially, can you hear me a little bit better now?
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay. Especially for those who've already been to La Fortuna but still want some adventure. A really good one, a combination would be going back to the Rio Celeste, but then pairing it with an area about an hour and a half outside Liberia Airport, Hacienda Guachapalin. It is a place where locals go. It has Rincon de la Vieja National Park, so another volcano here in Costa Rica. But the property itself is massive, and there's a lot for you to do. So you can still get those hot springs and the zip lining and the river tubing and wildlife. And there's 7 waterfalls to explore. Actually, technically, there's 10 to explore on your own. And so for somebody, going back to what Rachel says, that feels a little more comfortable and can do things on their own, explore on their own, that's a really great way to do that, or in the area to do it, because you can do pretty much everything on your own. Um, and I think those would be like, those are my go-to, especially for exploring on your own, and that drive specifically from like Liberia to Rio Celeste. Over in the Rio Celeste area, there's also Katira Labyrinth, which is really cool. There's a couple other like hidden gems off the side of the road that you can visit. That drive alone is really beautiful and easy. Um, there's a lot of great restaurant options as well that have beautiful views of the volcano, like Tenorio on one side and Miravallis on the other side. And then going back up to Guachipaline area, Upala. It's all super pretty, easy drives, easy to explore on your own.
I think that's something you make a really good point, that if you are coming back, you probably have a lot of confidence in visiting Costa Rica, perhaps for the second time. But it's also a country that does allow for exploration, and something that I think the country encourages. Tourism is obviously really popular if you do have a rental car. And especially in the area you just mentioned, Guanacaste, Liberia, Northern Alajuela, the province in the Central Valley, all the way up to the border with Nicaragua. These are really beautiful areas to drive around. Big open plains, the Caribbean side, Upala. It's a really good point. So if you do have a car and you have the flexibility to do so, that's a really nice spot to visit. Rachel, does it make a big difference about the weather? I mean, obviously we know, right, we're going to see more crowds between December through to April, and then less crowds generally May through November in the off season. How does that impact where you are in the country? So if you go to super busy beaches, are they as busy, or do you feel like you're kind of more isolated and alone, even in a busy area, if you are traveling in the off season?
Yeah, I definitely recommend when I talk to clients, especially repeats who don't want to have those crowds, like coming during the off season is an amazing time. Not only are prices a bit better,
Yeah.
but the crowds there's less people, and it's not like the weather, October down in my area, it could rain all day every day, but it's not like it's, all day, literally every day for, 7 weeks straight. So if you're okay with a little bit of afternoon rain showers where you can go in and lay in the hammock and read a book, I definitely recommend trying to travel during, our quote unquote rainy season, green season. Or if you're not a big fan of the rain, even doing those shoulder months like May,
Yeah.
maybe even September, in the beginning of December is a great time to come, because you don't feel like there's as many people, and so you still feel like it's off the beaten path even at some of the more tourist areas. So yeah, I definitely think I always try to recommend, it's my biggest question to clients is, if you don't mind a little bit of rain, like let's look at a different set of dates, because I promise it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, and every time, it's a really good point. Every time we travel, we test a lot of hotels around the country. Even when we're in really busy towns, but we're traveling from like June to November, sometimes they still feel really empty. So you still feel like you kind of have them to yourself when you're not in the typical travel season. So although it's not necessarily off the beaten path, it's off the beaten path in terms of the time of year. So that's, yeah, for sure, something that
I
is
also
definitely
think
worth
the
thinking about.
wildlife like is so much more active whenever it's not super hot. So like if you're coming to just do a simple just beach destination, okay, we might want to consider coming during the summertime. But if you're coming for like that wildlife aspect and to really get out and explore the cloud forest, explore the rainforest, coming during rainy season, like throw on a poncho or a rain jacket and go hiking through the jungle, because that's when you're going to see the most wildlife, and that's definitely a huge factor here, in Costa Rica to see.
Yeah. Kate, what about the same thing with national parks? We've got such a great array of national parks. I think 25% more or less is protected in Costa Rica. There's obviously the really famous ones, right? The Manuel Antonio National Park, super popular. We've discussed Arenal. There's a couple here in the Central Valley as well, even in the north, Palo Verde. You mentioned Rincon de la Vieja, another great one with a volcano. When we talk about avoiding crowds, as we just mentioned with the weather, say you are coming in the high season, but you do want to visit a couple of parks or biological reserves, are there any that you recommend, especially when it comes to wildlife spotting?
Yeah, so in the high season, like between December and April. So if we're going back to combining like high season but off the beaten path, less crowds, kind of trying to have your cake and eat it too type of thing. Um, Going back again to the Bajos del Toro area, it's just not a very popular area, and a lot of people know about it. So it's gonna basically all year long that area feels like there's nobody there. It's just untouched primary forest, and um, although there's not a national park, well, so technically there is a national park there. It's called Juan Castro Blanco National Park. There's not an official entry, although it isn't actually in the process of being opened. you can still go into it. It's just not official, like pretty, here's a national park, take a photo type of thing.
Yeah.
But technically there is a national park there and there's an immense amount of wildlife. But it, also in that area, like if you're staying around the, like outside San Jose, anywhere an hour to 2 hours around San Jose, there's also Irazu. Irazu is a really great one. It's never ever crowded. You can even go into San Gerardo de Dota. That's another off the beaten path place. Very secluded, very high up, like highest point in Costa Rica, higher than Monteverde. And you have the Quetzal National Park there. So if you're a birder, that's like birder's heaven. There's also Rancho Naturalista outside San Jose as well. Not a national park, but a biological preserve, also near Sarapiquí. So it's one of those things that there's a lot of national parks, but what a lot of people don't know is we actually have a lot of biological preserves as well that feel like a national park, but it's not technically a national park that boasts a lot of wildlife.
Yeah, really good point. You've listed a couple of great ones there. I'll get those names for you. We don't necessarily have articles or pages on every one of the parks you mentioned because they are off the beaten path and not necessarily as common, and they're really, really good ones. There is a video that we did a while ago here, guys, in case it helps. Day trips you can do from San Jose, and one of the focuses that you just mentioned, Kate, was the Irasu National Park. Is a beautiful place to visit, especially if you want to
cool.
walk on a volcanic crater. It's a lot higher. You mentioned a really good point about biological reserves as well. I'm going to share also a video with our top 7. But for example, if you were visiting Monteverde, that's the famous biological reserve, but there's also the Santa Elena Reserve. So,
My favorite.
yeah, it's a lot smaller. It's generally a lot less busy. You can do the whole hike in about 3 hours. It's really, claustrophobic when it comes to wildlife. It's right on top of you. That's a good example of being in the same area. A lot of people travel down the Central Pacific coast to visit Mount Antonio, but few people stop actually on the way to the Carrara National Park, which is less than an hour from San Jose, and gives you the same kind of immersion into the tropical rainforest there that is never really heaving with tourists in the same way. So there's definitely a couple of ways. I mean, you mentioned San Gerardo de Dota as well, which is a beautiful section of mountain kind of cloud forest leading to the coast. So yeah, lovely spots. Yeah.
And it's interesting. I don't know why we haven't even mentioned this, but there, Corcovado. Corcovado is a really great national park. It holds 2.5% of the world's biodiversity recognized by Nat Geo. It's off the beaten path. Dry season is a great time to go. It's not going to feel crowded because it's very, 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 very protected. There's a very limited amount of people that can go in that area at a time every year.
Yeah.
We do have a few hotels over there. I know that's definitely one of Rachel's favorite places. And if I lived over where Rachel was, I feel like I'd go there every weekend. It's beautiful, and I've done that combo, right? Copa de Arbol, Osa, and San Gerardo or Rafiki. I've done that combination with a few repeat clients, and they loved it. It was a really good combination, feeling like you are away from the tourist areas.
I was going to mention this. We don't usually discuss questions, but right now it's very apparent. Somebody's asked us. It's an anonymous question, but it's come in. What's a place where I feel like I'm seeing the real Costa Rica? Now, you mentioned Osa, and I always like mentioning this at the same time because the Corcovado National Park is, on a global scale, biologically really famous. So it is very well known, but it's certainly off the beaten path in terms of the typical tourist trail when you're actually coming on vacation here. You have to dedicate at least 3 or 4 nights, if you can, to it. It's the only real primary rainforest in the country. I always think that's the real Costa Rica because it's still not anywhere near as developed as the rest of the country. Pristine rainforest. You have to either, do a domestic flight to get there on either side of the national park, or do a 5, 6, 7, 8 hour drive, depending on where you're coming from. I mean, Rachel, would you agree when I say the real Costa Rica, like the experience, the wildlife mixed with the culture? Is that fair? Rachel? Oh, we might have lost Rachel for a second. Might it be the Costa Rican internet down in Novita? Another example of as to how real it can be. Oh, Rachel's back.
No, I'm back. I'm sorry, I froze. Yeah, actually, my number one thing when people ask that question, I would say Drake Bay is like the perfect example of like true Costa Rica. that town, you still feel like it's like, and I would also say Tortuguero as well. When Caitlin and I went, there's no cars there. It's all done by boat. I would say those two locations, like you really feel like you're seeing what Costa Rica was, 30, 40 plus years ago, which is rare to find these days, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. But I definitely think getting to more of those remote areas is going to show you more of like what, there hasn't been as much commercialized stuff that comes in. But yeah, I would definitely say the Osa Drake Bay as a town, and is definitely high up on that list.
Yeah, we've done it. We have a couple of travel consultants that actually live permanently down in Drake Bay, and they are very much off the beaten path, but it is very much a proper Costa Rican experience. And I think that's a good point, Rachel. How far going back 20, 30 years? It's a very long way, right, from the urbanized Central Valley of San Jose and all the airports and everything else. But even compared to some of the busy towns like Tamarindo, La Fortuna, where you do see a lot of visitors. So yeah, really, really lovely spots mixing with national park. And obviously, Kate, like you mentioned, if you are going to Osa and you're going to be inside the Corcovado National Park, you won't see many people just because it is a huge expanse of land and it's absolutely pristine. Fantastic. Well, we've ripped through a couple of great questions, guys. Don't forget, if you're still with us, please do get your questions into us. It can be anything at all. Maybe you're coming back for the 5th time and you want somewhere new to go. Maybe you want to know where is the best place to get the best Costa Rican breakfast. Are you a fan of gallo pinto? We can go into the rice and beans discussion. Anything you like, let us know and we'll get back to you. When it comes to, I've got some swimming questions. People always ask us waterfalls, hot springs, natural swimming spots. These are really good questions. Some are more popular. When you think hot springs, you think the Arenal volcano, volcanic activity. The waterfalls, very famous, the Peace Lodge Waterfall Gardens, only an hour away from the airport. Rachel, when it comes to those things, you want to be immersed in either swimming or hot springs of some form. You mentioned there are waterfalls close by, but what comes to your mind when you think, okay, more off the beaten path?
Yeah, I mean, at least down in my area, I can speak to would be like the Chantalis waterfall. Paddle and I and our partners do an amazing, amazing off the beaten path. All of their tours are very much geared towards off the beaten path. And even when you go to these waterfalls, they're all in my area, and I've been to them many times. You still feel like they're still pretty hidden. Nayaka is a little bit more touristy, but not compared to La Fortuna, La Paz Waterfall Gardens. But yeah, I would say that there's some really amazing ones, at least down in my area. For hot springs, I would say Rio Perdido has some really, really cool, unique hot springs. That's like an actual hotel that you can go to as a destination. That again does not feel as commercialized as what La Fortuna feels. So it still feels very real, coming from the volcano. So I would say those are probably some of my top ones.
Awesome. Can you do me a favor and send me those names, Rachel? You listed some really good ones. I can share the names directly in the chat, and then people can actually find them in Google as well. I think Michelle was asking if we can actually list them out, and Kate you've sent the exact location. That's fantastic in the chat. So if you guys want to see some of these questions, you can always go into the answered section, which is on tab 2 in the questions and answers feature here in Zoom. So we can actually put that straight in there for you. And you will find the Nayaka waterfalls here. I'm going to share this with the group as well, so you can check that out a little bit closer to where Rachel is. And Kate, what about up in Guanacaste and around the Arenal area when it comes to waterfalls, hidden hot springs, or spots to swim that locals love?
Okay, so favorite waterfall in Guanacaste area specifically, if you're staying on the beach side and you need a day trip inland, keeping in mind that inland trips from Guanacaste are a full day adventure because you're quite far away from the rainforest at that point, is La Leona. La Leona is a really, really great one. It's definitely have gotten more popular thanks to social media, but I think it's still considered off the beaten path. The hike to it is not very difficult. The it's it's not really the waterfall itself is you get to swim like upstream through a beautiful, if it hasn't rained recently, the water's super, super blue, again, due to the chemical reaction of the volcanic minerals. So similar to Rio Celeste. And you essentially go up into a waterfall canyon. It's really cool. It's good for, I would say, minimum age 5 to 6 years old. I've seen as little as a 3-year-old do it. It was a local 3-year-old. I'm not sure if our tour providers will let a 3-year-old, but 5, 6-year-old is usually the minimum age. You wear life jackets and all that good stuff. So that one's a really, really good one, really fun one, good bonding experience for the family as well. And then let's see, in La Fortuna area, Um, actually, there. So it's not. So La Fortuna itself, like the main waterfall, is La Fortuna waterfall, and that one is very touristy. It's beautiful, and it is worth seeing if you're in the area. But you actually have to get outside of La Fortuna a little bit, and so there's actually one that we now offer with one of our favorite tour providers, Pure Trek, in the area, who does the waterfall rappelling. But they also now offer one. It's about an hour and 20 minutes outside La Fortuna. It's called El Viejo Waterfall, and that's like it's really deep in the jungle, about a 45-minute hike, not super intense at all, off the beaten path, and you get to rappel down it. There's like a little jump off spot you can go into, so that one's super unique and very beautiful. So that would be the two in the La Fortuna or Guanacaste region, without mentioning Rio Celeste again, because Rio
Yeah.
Celeste is really beautiful.
Yeah, the La Leona waterfall, and I haven't been yet, and I've edited many photos so many times and seen so many videos on social media because it has got a bit more popular in the last couple of years. It looks amazing. The experience of just getting there through the water, kind of like a cenote in Mexico when you actually get there with the formation of the rocks. That's a highly recommended place. And I guess this is the thing with Costa Rica, right? The popularity of the country means that when these areas kind of blow up, either on social or people start to know about them, it's very quickly do they not they don't remain a hidden gem. It's kind of hard discussing it, right, and then keeping it.
Yeah.
But yeah, really good spots there. I think we've listed a couple.
I
Pablo has
will
got a good
I
link.
will add one more. It's not Guanacaste or La Fortuna, but in between the two. It's also becoming a bit more popular, but I still don't think that a lot of people go to it. But it is in Monteverde, outside of Monteverde. There's an area called El Tigre. Um, for any of my super adventurous active clients, I always choose that one over La Fortuna waterfall. Why? One, it's less touristy, there's less people. Two, you see multiple waterfalls. Three, it's really deep in the jungle. You cross over rivers, hanging bridges. There's multiple waterfalls, three main ones that are massive. The weather's cooler, it's not as hot, so it's a little bit nicer of a hike. And the area itself is just very beautiful. It's super like stunning mountains, hills, and then a canyon where all these waterfalls are at. It's a really, really unique off the beaten path. So El Tigre is definitely one of my favorite waterfall hikes in the whole country. I've done it 5 times. And
Wow.
I've done it in every different season. I know there's 4 seasons, but like I've done it throughout the different months in the year. So I've seen it in all types, and it's one of those things that every time you go, you see something different because the rainforest changes
Yeah.
because the weather comes in. So the people that are working on that area and keeping the paths, because you can go guided or you cannot go guided. It's up to you. To keep it clear and good for tourism, they have to clear out the paths if trees fall, and so new bridges are made and new pathways are made.
Yeah.
So every time I've gone, it's been a different experience, which is really cool.
Very, very cool. And amazingly, we have a link about El Tigre. So I've just shared it straight to our website right there. I've not visited either, and you've sold me on it. So that's two new areas that I'm learning. And I can say I've been here for a long time. So that's fantastic. This is why
One
we
other
do
one,
this.
Adam, I wanted to add in because a lot of these that we're talking about are amazing, but they're harder to do for people that might have mobility issues.
Yeah.
One that I did with my grandmother was Llanos de Cortez, and that one was in
Oh,
between
Yes.
Arenal to Guanacaste, and that was something that like my grandmother actually got to do with us because it's a little bit more accessible. It still feels super off the beaten path because it's not concrete or anything like that to get down. You still have to pay to enter,
Yeah.
but it was very accessible for all ages. I have two young kids. They were able to walk it, and there's 3 or 4 waterfalls down there, like with a beach in the middle. So that one was something that was really, really unique, and there was very few people there. So that is one I want to throw in there.
That's a
and
really
that's
good
one
one to
I
think
haven't
of.
been to.
Yeah,
I
there you
haven't been
go.
to that one. I know about it, but I haven't been to that one. So it's good to know.
It's a
Yeah, and
really
that one's
nice.
worth stopping between, Arenal to Guanacaste. It's like right on the way. So
A couple of tour operators in the region around Liberia, if you are in Guanacaste, do offer that, like you just mentioned, or combining it. We did a video a while ago. It's the top 5 waterfalls. Again, some of them are super popular, as mentioned, but Llanos de Cortez is there as well. I'll write that here, Llanos, in case you're interested, de Cortez. And it's a nice, you can get there, as I say, from the highway. And it's quite surprising that that formation, and it's really lovely to swim at, is so close to one of those major intersections that's easy to get off, park your car, walk down on kind of a bit of an off the beaten path path down there. There you go. So there you go. Check out the video and you can see Llanos de Cortez inside the video as well. Good stuff. Now, again, we are answering the questions as we go today, because one of my questions here actually is exactly what Laura has asked us. And Laura has chimed in with, what's your favorite beach in Costa Rica that nobody really talks about? And one of my questions here was specifically talking about hidden beaches around the country that perhaps rival Tamarindo or Mount Antonio for destinations. Maybe you're coming back, or maybe you just want a quieter experience. So, Rachel, when you think about beach locations, you've mentioned Uvita, but what's another one that springs to mind that's off the beaten path a little bit more?
Yeah, I'm going to switch up and do the Caribbean side for a little bit because I know a lot of people have heard of Puerto Viejo and that beach is great. But then there's Punta Uva, which is south of that, and that's definitely way more laid back. You know, it still feels very raw. That's a favorite. And I know a lot of our clients do San Manuel Antonio. So if you don't want to go to the main beaches in Manuel Antonio, there's Playa Sands, which is kind of an adventure to get to. So it makes it feel still off the beaten path. It still feels a little more touristy than some of these other ones that we might talk about. But if you're staying in Manuel Antonio and don't want to go too far, that's a really great one. It's like in a cove, so it's a little bit easier to swim with kids and that sort of thing. So I would say those are two that would be, really unique and cool to see.
Yeah. You listed a couple of great spots. I mean, if you guys have been to the Pacific side, you come back and you want to go and visit the Caribbean side, everything you just mentioned, Rachel, I've got the link there. Puerto Viejo and the beaches around the town, but also down to Punta Uva. Really, really beautiful. I mean, talk about one of the best beaches for swimming, tiny swimming pools, clear water, great for snorkeling. There's a bit more of a drive. You're talking 4 or 5 hours from San Jose, depending on the traffic, but it's really worth it if you are looking for a more chilled out experience. And then even Playa Bay Sands.
You can take a flight.
You can take a flight into the Limon airport and then the little shuttle down the coast. That's true. Really good spots. And obviously Mount Antonio is the big one, right? But if you are there, you mentioned Playa Bay Sands. Sometimes if you're out on the water doing a catamaran tour, you can see all the coves, the nooks and crannies around that, and you can see some of these smaller beaches that a couple of hotels specifically have access to in the area as well. So it's a really good spot. Kate, what about you and thinking about more of the north of the country?
Yeah, so I have to double down on what Rachel said. Punta Uva in Puerto Viejo is stunning. So funny that we're talking about this now because Punta Uva was my favorite. And now, as of 2 weeks ago, I had the pleasure of visiting some of the Nicoya Peninsula area and beaches over there. I'm not a big beach person, so that's definitely one of those things I don't know as much about. I prefer to be in the mountains, but when I was in the Nicoya for 5 days, I had the pleasure of visiting San Juanilo. Oh my goodness, so beautiful. And I beg to say, or dare to say, that it is now my favorite over Punta Uva.
Wow.
It was just breathtakingly beautiful. It kind of reminded me of like a mini Uvita whale's tail because it had that same formation where you have a beach on each side.
Yeah.
And you can walk out into the ocean with all the rock formations and everything. So San Juanilo, down near Nosara, is very beautiful. And then another one that I discovered when I first came to Costa Rica, or when I first moved here 5 years ago. It's up there near Playa Hermosa in Guanacaste, on a little peninsula. It's called Por Calzone Beach, or Poor Man's Beach, I believe. That's where all the locals go. It can get crowded if you go on a weekend, but if you're there during the week, it's pretty secluded. There's no one really there. It's smaller, intimate, water is crystal blue, white sand, and it's right next to Playa Hermosa. So if you're in Hermosa area or Coco, you want a different beach experience with less people, it's like a 10-15 minute drive.
And what was the name of that beach, Caitlin?
Pobre Calzone, or like Poor Man's Beach.
Pobre Calzone. And the first one that has the two beaches that you mentioned?
San Juanilo.
Can you type that out so I can share that with everyone?
Yeah.
That I've seen pictures of this beach and I thought it looked absolutely beautiful when I found it on Google Maps. I haven't been there
I just
myself.
posted about it. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Juanilo.
Here we go. I think Pablo has just shared it. So I can
One
think.
thing that I was going to add in that we have really cool boat tours that take you to secluded beaches that are not even accessible by land. So that's something if you're up in the Guanacaste area to check out, because a lot
Yeah.
of the boat tours try to find the more, legit secluded beaches where it's, there's just rocks where you can't get to it unless you're going by water. So that's if you really want true, off the beaten path, more secluded and hidden, you can take boat tours out to some of these beaches.
Totally agree. And that was actually what I was going to mention. I've just added two in the chat. Two I really like. Playa Huevos is one of the really popular beaches that it means like egg beach, but you have to get there via a small boat in the Papagayo Gulf, which is amazing if you're diving out there, snorkeling or just swimming. Really, really clear. But also Playa Penca is on the mainland, and it's actually hidden around a couple of really popular beaches near Potrero and Flamingo. But it offers light pink sand, really nice for swimming as well. There are no large hotels straight on the beach. So it's a lot easier to get to. And you'll find more locals swimming there, but it's never really packed. So in terms of Guanacaste specifically, you've got those options, guys. You've mentioned a load of beaches, which is great. Hopefully we've provided all the names to everyone. So do check that out. A couple more questions before we get to any final questions regarding our Q&A session. When it comes to off the beaten path towns, Kate, has there been any towns that you really like that look at Costa Rica culture specifically, or you think, oh, this is beautiful, quaint? I really feel you mentioned Drake Bay. We've discussed Drake Bay and the Osa, but are there any other towns that really have that authentic Tico culture?
Yeah. My my favorite will always be, I mean, it's not really a tourist destination, but you can definitely stay there. There are
Yeah.
hotels, but my favorite would be San Ramon. It is a little bit more up and coming, like it's more developed, but it's definitely a Tico town. It just there is things there, there's like a mall and like there are things there, so it's not like secluded by any
Yeah.
means. It's only an hour outside San Jose, but that is the town that made me fall in love with Costa Rica in 2016. So anytime I can go back there, and then the surrounding area of San Ramon, we actually have a hotel there, Villa Blanca, up in the mountains. Is very beautiful. It's a lot of farmland, cooler temperatures. There's a lot of festivities and local um, festivals and farmers markets and stuff that happen there a lot. And it's great if you are in San Jose because it is only an hour, or you can stop there on the way to Manuel Antonio or even La Fortuna. You can kind of go through there and do a couple nights there, and you can do a coffee chocolate tour there. You can, if you play your cards out and come at a certain festivity season like our Independence Day in September, um, or Christmas even. Oh, so beautiful during
Yeah.
Christmas. That's always my favorite city in Costa
That
Rica.
that's a really good answer. You know, when you said it, I'm like, oh yeah, San Ramon. Because for those that are visiting Arenal, you're probably always going to drive through San Ramon on the way to the volcano from San Jose, and you've got the beautiful church, the soccer field. You've got it's a kind of a large town or very small
Yeah,
city by Costa Rica standards.
yeah,
But all the schools that you drive past and the immediate access to the surrounding area, I always think it's beautiful, very chilled out. The local parks, like, in front of the church, the central plaza is always really nice. There's great sodas, local coffee shops and cafes to stop for lunch. Yeah, there's an article that I've shared with you guys. San Ramon is a really nice one, and obviously you mentioned Villa Blanca. Shout out to Villa Blanca, a lovely small boutique property that's just outside up in the mountains, offering real authentic Costa Rica casitas, small little rooms designed in the old finca style from a couple of hundred years ago, which is offering great food, great vistas, and a lovely connection to the cloud forest.
and
Great answer.
there are things to do in San Ramon too. Like even if you only have like 2 or 3 to 4 nights to spare, and you want like a Costa Rica, like just a shot of Costa Rica real quick, that's a really great spot because of Villa Blanca. But also like there are waterfalls right outside San Ramon too that I
Yeah,
have visited that are beautiful. They're great hiking spots as well, and so you can get there's even like bungee jumping and zip lining like right around the area too. So no, it's not the volcano area, but San Ramon kind of has a little bit of everything, and it's really close to the beach as well. So
yeah.
it's just a nice central location.
Yeah, no, spot on. And there, I've shared a link to Via Blanca if you guys want to explore the hotel a bit more. Rachel, do you have a particular town that you've fallen in love with over the years that's a bit more cultural?
Yeah, I mean, and to kind of like take a step back from that, I feel like any little town right before the big destinations is a really great like starting place, because even if it's not like, even if you haven't heard of it, I think that's where most of the locals will go to live outside of the big tourist destinations. And so then you really do still feel that sort of real authentic culture. Some few that come to mind, at least in my area, is Sierpe. Sierpe is a stop right before you go down to Drake Bay. I still think Drake Bay is one of the top ones. But to me, Sierpe, every time I'm down there, I'm like, wow, like I feel like I'm in the middle of nowhere. Like it, and just to sit on the river like that feels super authentic to me. It still doesn't feel, even though there's so many people that come through when they're heading to the Osa, not much has changed in the town. They've got the little park there. Like it still feels very like charming and quaint. I would say even Cahuita a little bit before you get to Puerto Viejo could be considered one. So again, anything that's right before these big tourist destinations, I feel like are still able to kind of hold and protect kind of the local culture versus, the larger tourist destinations.
Yeah, really good point. Great answer. And that's a really good point about Kawita as well. Not that it gets overlooked, this lovely, beautiful little national park right next to, yeah, Puerto Viejo, but it is a smaller town, smaller properties, still real authentic Afro-Caribbean vibe. We did a video, it's actually maybe going back 10 years, with one of our travel consultants who lives out there. So if you ever want to check out Kawita, you can learn a bit more about the actual town, which is a fun one. But yeah, really good point about maintaining the culture in those tiny towns before particular areas that get really busy. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, guys. Well, I've got a couple more questions before we wrap up. Thank you for the questions. There's a couple more coming in. We will get to some of them. A question about safety, driving around. Michelle's looking to come down for a short stop. We will get to those questions very soon. My penultimate question, I'll throw this over to you, Rachel. What are some of the alternative adventure activities now that perhaps are in lesser known areas over your typical zip lining, your waterfall rappelling, your whitewater rafting? Is there anything else that's becoming popular?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things over the years is recommending like the most like unique tours that are not, of course, you still want to do the zip line, that kind of thing, but
Yeah.
also throwing in those more cultural tours where you can go to the farm an hour and a half outside of La Fortuna to see how they just got electricity a few years ago. So it's like to really see what it was and what it still is. Caño Blanco is one of my favorite ones. It's about an hour, like I said, an hour and a half outside of La Fortuna. You go to Doña Wendy's house, you get to see them make tortillas, you have coffee with them, and then you go on a boat ride to see the wildlife. So that's been one of my top ones. I would say any of our tour partners with that, Paddle Nine does amazing ones where they're really putting together these tours where it still feels cultural. You're going to waterfalls that are not in most of the Lonely Planet books and that are high up on the list of that. So I would say some of those, but yeah, I would say any of the cultural tours to see the farms or like the Vanilla Spice tours that you're still getting the local authentic feeling of it. Yes, it's being made into a tour, but they do try to still preserve the real, even cooking classes. I feel like you can get that through going and actually cooking with them and picking the veggies out of the off the farm and that sort of thing.
I think that's a great answer, and I'm going to put a link here to some of our cultural tours. I think it's a really interesting as well in the last 5 to 6 years, perhaps, that a lot of even our smaller boutique hotels are targeting more of these cultural immersion tours. So you'll find a lot more farm to table experiences around the country. Again, smaller boutique hotels, but that experience of actually cooking the food yourself, understanding where the food's come from, but also kids, the educational side, going on the small farm experiences, and just immersing yourself a little bit more in the culture is now really important and high up on a traveler's list, just to feel like you're a little bit more connected, right? As opposed to, yes, you do the big, the usual things, or you see the big national parks, you do the whitewater rafting, but also say that you have an idea about how the locals live, which is obviously a lot about what we're talking about here. Yeah, fantastic. There's a lot to do. Do you have any like specific adventure things, Kate, that you've done recently? You've discussed La Leona waterfall, which I think is a really good example of a hidden area that's a bit more um I guess adventure driven slightly, because it's a bit of an adventure to get there. Is there anything else that you've noticed pop up in the last little while?
Um, Not really. I haven't had any new discoveries. I'm constantly exploring the waterfalls in Bajos because there's a million of them. There's a lot. So that would probably be the only thing. But over here, I really don't, like, honest answer, I really haven't heard of anything new.
Yeah.
Actually, so not new, but something that, so I take that back. Okay. Not new, but something that we are starting to offer those who specifically, maybe not adventure, but birding or again, going off the beaten path, since this is about the hidden gems. Going into you go past La Fortuna, going towards Nicaragua. You'll hit an area. There's a hotel there called Tucanet, right? Tucanet Camp. Um, that's like
Toku
cool.
tent camp.
Taku, Toku Camp.
Yes.
Um, that's a really cool one. You were just there to kind of like glamp a little bit, and great for wildlife and very Costa Rican. And there's also the area of Macanque. I have been there as well, and I believe we're working on partnering with some hotels over there too, because they're lesser known, but they're amazing. It's, if you try to find it on the map, you won't be able to, because it's literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like really, really in the middle of nowhere. But wildlife will be very heightened there. No tourists. Really great again for just wildlife and birding. So maybe not so much an adventure, but like want to go really off the beaten path. Like I'm talking like 2 hours in the middle of nowhere type of thing. Those places are really cool. And they're a great combination to, pair it with somewhere more touristy like La Fortuna.
Yeah.
So you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, very, very true. Hey, you mentioned a property there that I wanted to bring up. So my last question for you guys, and I'm going to jump in first, is what are some of the more hidden eco lodges or sustainable ways of experiencing Costa Rica in the less touristy areas? You just mentioned Toku Tent Camp, which I want to throw right up there. And this is how you spell it, Toku Tent Camp. Now, as Caitlin mentioned, we were there about maybe a month ago shooting for Frog TV. You can check out the video there. This is a great example. Rachel mentioned Rafiki. So again, a glamping experience. Yeah. This is a high-end glamping experience in the Cañon Negro Wildlife Refuge in the north of the country. So very close to the region of Upala, which also has a beautiful property. We can also discuss the property up there. But Tokuten Camp has like 20 tents. You're actually inside the wildlife refuge. So you get this beautiful dining experience, farm to table food, but also being so close to the actual the wildlife refugio, you can get right on the water, see, get the boat, loads of bird species, but the adventure is amazing as well. And it's really local. They will stop at one of the local towns where you can see the tiny little butterfly gardens, artisanal artists, trying to sell their wares to the tourists, which is an amazing experience. So I highly recommend checking out the video. And if you're interested, get in touch with us. They've only just opened their doors about 2 or 3 months ago. And that is why you are really off the beaten path. It's 3 or 4 hours north of San Jose. That's my personal new favorite in the country. Rachel, do you have a brand new kind of more off the beaten path, smaller place that you'd recommend?
I mean, I definitely have said quite a few of my favorites that we've already put in there. I think the only other one that I can think of is Origins Lodge, which we haven't really touched on. I think I mentioned Upala, which is the location that it's in, but the views of Lake Nicaragua and everything are pretty amazing. Sorry. But yeah, I would say that's the only other one besides the ones I already mentioned that are some definitely top ones. I would also say Chichagua outside of La Fortuna. Yes, it's still closer to La Fortuna, but 20-30 minutes outside of town where you still feel a little bit more off the beaten path, but close enough where you can still do the activities from there. I would say that's a really unique one too.
Yeah. Yeah, two beautiful properties. Origins is incredible. If you guys want a high-end experience, I'm going to share the link.
If you're foodies, definitely go for the food.
Oh, it's amazing. I was surprised about the cost. It's not the cheapest when it comes to the food, but because the food was so good, I wasn't complaining at all. It's worse when you spend too much on a meal and it's like average or mediocre. But this was incredible. And the views, yeah. I mean, the service, highly recommend you guys check that out. Chichagua also is really nice. Caitlin, were you going to mention Chichagua or where?
Yeah,
what is it?
I will say the same. Yeah, I'll say the same. Chichagua for sure. If you want somewhere different, not in the main tourist town of La Fortuna, but close enough to do things like Rachel said, Chichagua is beautiful. The drive is also very beautiful. The family that owns it is very, very sweet and passionate about what they do. They offer a few cultural activities on site as well. like the traditional trapiche tour, like sugarcane, coffee, that type of thing. So yeah, double down on Chachagua for sure.
Excellent.
And they also they have their go for it, Rachel.
Oh no, well, I was just gonna throw out Pequari Lodge is also one that's
Oh,
definitely more higher
yes.
end. But that one is if you want more adventure. I think that one could be considered pretty off the beaten path as well.
That's a really good point. And we have mentioned, it's worth noting that a couple of these are really high end. Origins Lodge is top end, along with Pakwari Lodge. And just because they're high end, it doesn't mean that they're lesser known, because they obviously they do their bit right on their marketing sides as well. But they are unique in their own areas. So if you do go to Pakwari Lodge via the river, the incredible, class 4 to 5 rapids, you stop at Pakwari Lodge on the way, or you can drive in and out if you don't want to do the river as an option. But they are amazing experiences in of themselves. They create their own destinations, much like Origins Lodge. Chichagua as well is a lovely experience, not quite as luxurious, so it might be more accessible to many. If you don't want to be surrounded by loads of people in the Arenal area immediately, Chichagua is a great experience. I will share Pequari Lodge with you. Pablo's given it a little heart. I know he loves it.
I
There you
also
go.
wanted to add in that although like we're considering them high end, it's not like, the larger commercialized high end resorts, like these hotels that are more boutique. I think that's important to mention, especially for clients, because a lot of times these, quote unquote eco lodges, they are much more authentic. Although they are expensive, because sometimes you don't put those two together, that a luxury property is going to feel Costa Rican. But these eco lodges really do an amazing job of making you feel like you're in Costa Rica, from like the snacks in the mini bar to the way that the people at the restaurant can explain things for the area. So I think that's something that's really important to note.
Yeah, that's
Sure.
true. And that's the great thing about the high-end boutique experience. The eco lodges come with the incredible sustainable experience, the service, the food. They're all really top-notch, 5-star without being that the 5-star kind of massive resort branded experience. Hey guys, we've covered an awful lot. We're already approaching an hour. So thank you so much for ripping through all of those questions. I hope you guys have found this really helpful. Let's jump into a couple of questions here. I know Michelle Smith. Michelle, thank you for getting in touch with us. You had a couple of questions that I believe Rachel and Kate have been working on. Michelle, you mentioned that you are 6 and you're traveling with us for a vacation in January. You've got a transfer from Arenal to Manuel Antonio. Kate, do you want to go over the answer that you gave Michelle in case it helps anybody else?
Yeah, so going from La Fortuna to Manuel Antonio, one stop that our drivers, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. One stop that our transportation will always stop at is Tarcolis Bridge. That bridge is about 90 minutes outside of Manuel Antonio. It's right next to Jaco. It's a great spot to stretch your legs, grab a snack or a coffee. There's like a huge outdoor market with tons of like artisanal crafts and goods. And then the bridge itself, you can walk, and there's like massive crocodiles underneath that bridge, and hundreds of them. So that's really cool. Other than that, for like a stop for lunch, I always say San Ramon, just because it's a really beautiful town. It's safe, it's clean, there's a ton of food options, whether you want something Costa Rican or maybe you're just like, I really want some sushi. There's also sushi, pizza, there's a little bit of everything. And it's beautiful. And the cathedral church that is there is one of the most beautiful cathedral churches, I think, um, in Costa Rica that I've seen. And the park is really pretty as well. Um, and then if you want like an actual like hike or like an activity, you can do instead of like you can do an adventure connection. You can actually whitewater raft on the way, so you'll stop halfway and whitewater raft a little bit and have lunch. Or if you're not about that, or maybe you already did that, you can stop. Adam mentioned it earlier, like a national park that's kind of off the beaten path or lesser known is Carrara National Park, which is really popular for those macaws. Um, those would be my suggestions. I don't know, Rachel might have a few more since she lives over in that area.
Yeah, no, I think you hit all the top ones. The only other thing I say is if you do have drivers, like it's always great to let them know like what you'd be looking for, because they can pass by different places. Like, oh, there's a lot of people there. I'm gonna take you to this other small little soda. So does the restaurants here that are open air. So I always say like check in with your driver, because they're the ones that make this drive all the time, and explain to them what you're looking for. If you want super authentic, super like Costa Rica comida, then I think that definitely asking the drivers to do that is a great option.
Agreed. You guys have nailed that all the way down. I think that's a really good point. And Carrara National Park is really nice. As we mentioned, I just shared the link with you guys. It is on the way and it is a nice stop, and it's not very big. There's a lot of different loops, and it's very accessible even for those potentially in a wheelchair or with mobility issues. You can do a 1 kilometer gentle hike that's concreted all the way around with, you know, really nice little access points to see some frogs, to see some streams. I took my little daughter when she was really, really young, even in the pram, and that was super easy to get around. If you do want to hike more, you can hike off the beaten path inside Carrara and go in further, which is pretty cool. The other question that we haven't answered yet, Rachel, I'll throw it over to you, is another question from an anonymous attendee. Is it safe and easy to drive to these lesser known places, or should we get a driver?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it depends on how adventurous you want to be. I do think if you do choose to drive on your own, be very mindful of what you leave in your car. Costa Rica is very safe in general, but you know, things, you know, if you leave your phone inside, you could come back and your phone might not be there. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing, that to these locations that don't have the proper security and everything like that, definitely still feel safe going to check it out. It's more just be mindful of what you're leaving in the car. I would take your passport and everything with you and kind of keep it on you. On the flip side, you know, if you don't want to mess with that, having the hotel arrange a taxi to these locations, most of the taxi drivers or shuttle drivers will know where they're at. They can drop you off, say, hey, come back in an hour. You can do that as well. So I think it depends on your comfort level. But in general, yes, it is very safe to drive to all these little off the beaten path, pay the entrance fee if there's an entrance fee, and then head in. So I think you could do both options. It just depends on what your comfort level is.
Yeah, and I think it's also to the bigger point about the safety in general. I always find that when you're driving around, especially in the more rural areas, it is pretty safe in Costa Rica. I mean, you know, you're parking in safe places, right? And you're not out really late at night, so it just kind of depends on how you travel. But generally, most people don't have issues. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yes, sure. Yeah, yeah.
Good
And I
stuff.
would also add on,
Yeah.
you know, personally, I have never, ever, ever felt unsafe driving Costa Rica, and I tend to drive at night a lot. So even at night, not to say that it's like go drive at night, you know, willy-nilly, but you know that sometimes in other places it's always best to like drive during the daytime, which obviously is a normal good tip. But even if you do have to go past, you know, the sun goes down a couple like an hour or so, it's not a big deal because it's still safe in terms of the country. Now, of course, might be a little more adventurous because the roads are smaller and windier and you have to drive a little bit slower, but it's not unsafe in terms of like you're not going to get stopped or pulled over by people or
Yeah.
anything like that. And it's also really important to mention that although some of these off the beaten paths are easy to drive to and generally safe to drive to most of the year, during the green season, especially on the coastline, it is something to consider. Like if that is the time you're coming, um, it might make sense to have a driver just because there are a lot of places where in the dry season are you can drive over no problem. There's a bridge or a river or whatever, and it's fine. But in the green season, it's like totally like you cannot pass it. There's like another way you have to go, which is not on Google Maps or Waze,
Yeah.
and only locals really know about it. And one that I just did 2 weeks ago in Nicoya, I drove over this river that was dry. It's totally fine. And then 2 weeks passes, and one of our coworkers messaged me. She's like, "Remember that river that we drove through? Yeah, it's like a lake now." So it's
That's a
stuff
good
like
point.
that. It's stuff like that. It's like really depends on the time of the year, but most of the time, like Rachel said, is super easy and kind of fun to
Yeah.
to drive around because it's beautiful.
And I
If
would
you
say always get 4x4, no matter if you think you're going to use it or not, just for especially during rainy season, you want to have
Yeah.
that extra up to get out of little situations.
Yeah.
4x4 is definitely the way to go. And you can also, if you are thinking about exploring, you can ask your hotel. They're probably going to help you out. But you can also ask our in-country travel experience team, who are always available to help you. And even if it is, you know, in the middle of the green season, they will probably know if an area is inaccessible or that you should take caution before jumping over. Really, really good point. Hey, Rachel, Kate, thank you so much for your time. For everyone listening, I'm going to add Rachel and Kate's names and emails there if you wish to reach out to either one of them to help plan your next Costa Rican vacation or address any of the questions that we've covered in today's webinar. If you have any questions and you're watching this after the live webinar on YouTube, you can let us know anything at all in the comments box below, and we'll get straight back to you, of course. As ever, please don't forget to subscribe to stay in touch and never miss our monthly webinars, and obviously our social channels have all sorts of fun news, information, and promo deals as well for Costa Rica. Rachel, Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Awesome. Well, guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. We look forward to seeing you at the end of June for the next fun webinar. We will let you know what that is in the next couple of weeks. So in the meantime, from me, everybody else at Costa Rica Vacations, and Rachel and Caitlin, hasta la próxima. See you guys.
Pura vida.